Good afternoon. I'm very happy and excited to be here at California Historical Landmark number 488, the site of Fresno City. My name is Ray Nahara, and I am the Executive Director of the California Landmark Foundation. Our mission is to maintain and preserve California historical landmarks. Under normal circumstances, this dedication would have been open for the entire public, but this year it was just not possible. In 1952, this site was recognized by the state as a California historical landmark, and a bronze plaque was placed here in the monument behind me. Sometime in the late 1960s, vandals stole the plaque and partially damaged some of the stone on this monument. And here it has sat in that condition for about 50 years. Today we will change that. Here with some history about Fresno City is Elizabeth LAVAL from the Fresno Historical Society.
Thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth LAVAL, the president of the Fresno County Historical Society. We're so pleased to be part of this exciting day. Thank you for all of your hard work to restore the monument at this historic site. The Fresno County Historical Society has been part of recognizing the history of this land, dating all the way back to the original dedication of the landmark in 1952. Then, as still is today, it was important to create a remembrance of the site of old Fresno City, the predecessor of our present-day city of Fresno. The original monument was dedicated to the memory of, quote, the pioneers of an earlier day who left to succeeding generations a pattern of courage and perseverance for the development of this great valley, unquote. At the time, Fresno historian Ben Walker explained the significance of the old town site, where he said, no trace remains of a community which once furnished the Pacific coast with most of its news from the east. It was no great city, he said, but let's not kid ourselves. There were a number of buildings there. It was the head of the San Joaquin River navigation toward the south, when the easiest way to travel was by water, and for a time, it was the southern terminus of the telegraph line. A subsidized stage line from Independence, Kansas to San Francisco passed through the community. It brought passengers, mail, and newspapers from the east. Many of the enterprising papers of San Francisco stationed men right there in Fresno City to intercept the eastern newspapers and telegraph the news back to them. Those of us that are steeped in Fresno County history are aware of the importance of Fresno City to the development of the valley that we know today. This small, unlikely city became the namesake for our county when it was formed in 1856. Even though Millerton was named the county seat, it was Fresno City on the Fresno Slough, just north of Tranquility, from which the county would draw its name. Why the new county name became Fresno instead of Millerton, the county's largest and most important settlement, may be due to the fact that the area was known as the county around Fresno City to people using the Butterfield Overland stage route. It's also worth noting that despite being the county seat, the town of Millerton was never platted and therefore never a formal city. Fresno City was older and is the first recorded town site platted in the county. Fresno City on the Fresno Slough below White's Bridge of Watson's Ferry, as it was known of old, Fresno City was located at the head of the navigation on Fresno Slough at an elevation of 164 feet. The city was named after the Spanish word for the Oregon ash trees that commonly grew along the riverbanks. The slough was a branch of the Kings River that flowed into the San Joaquin River. The city was conceived in connection with a gigantic scheme, the character of which, well, may be questioned in light of the subsequent happenings. Fresno City was intended to be a great maritime port that would lay tribute all the vast inland region from the San Joaquin Valley. A.J. Downer was one of a number of enterprising enthusiasts who conceived the idea and of whom early records note that he always referred to himself as of Fresno City, as if he had a copyright on the designation. Fresno City, in the vision of these early developers, was to be a commercial emporium. Grants of fertile and well-watered swamp and overflowed lands were voted to aid the enterprise. The town was started around 1855. A pier was built to accommodate flatboats and barges that could make it through the shallow waters. Docks, wharves, and warehouses were planned to have marked the meanderings of the slough through the city. In 1858, the Casa Blanca Hotel, a large white structure, was built on the town site, and in addition to housing visitors, it became the stage station for the Butterfield Overland Mail. On April 25, 1860, the town site map, hand-drawn on oiled tracing paper, was filed with the county clerk at Millerton. No record remains of who filed the map or whose idea originally was to lay out this town at the head of the steamer navigation on the slough. We know that it was not meant to be a small town. The drawing showed an ambitious 89-block area that measured 2¼ miles east and west and 1 mile north and south. Head of navigation, to be sure it was, but there is only one well-authentic case of a steamer ever having passed the city. It had started for Tulare Lake from the San Joaquin on the floodwater of the winter's deluge. The water receded unexpectedly, and the steamer heading back for water in the river was left stranded, and its hulk for years was thereafter a landmark on the plains. Alas, the Butterfield stagecoach line closed early 1861. The Great Flood of 1862 did lasting damage, and the city was practically abandoned by 1865. A post office did operate at Fresno City from 1860 to 1863. The final nail, perhaps, was the big flood in the winter of 1867, which put an end to shipping by water as the slough filled up with sand. After the city's decline, conditions of the various grants were never fulfilled. Suit was brought in federal court to cancel the grants for non-fulfillment of terms, and the land reverted to the government. The Maritime Canal Scheme was effectively killed, and so was Fresno City. La Casa Blanca and the bleaching hulk of the stranded steamer marked for years on the plains the town site that never recalled a gigantic scheme, which probably was never really seriously intended to be carried through. The old Fresno City on the slough land became part of a nearly violent controversy, in particular by land barons Jefferson G. James and Henry Miller, who filed suit to take ownership of the San Joaquin River. While this is a story unto itself, the important point related to this story of land around the slough is that James, as in James Road, had incredible success. In 1867, he established the James Ranch headquarters in its permanent location, forming the nucleus of West Side agriculture. James established 36 ranches on the 167,000 acres that he had accumulated, renting them to many smaller operators, including Japanese immigrant Isaburo Wada, who raised the first rice in the district. The death of James in 1910 started the dissolution of his holdings and began the march of population onto the fertile plains southwest of Fresno. It brought one of the valley's biggest land promotion campaigns, participated in by some of the state's outstanding developers. A prospectus published in 1913 describes the James Ranch land as fertile as a garden and situated in Fresno County, celebrated throughout the West as a producer of great crops, where growth goes on throughout the whole year and where farming is easier than anywhere else in California. The history of this land is also the story of the city of Tranquility, which progressed from swamp to intensified and diversified farming. Aided by his son-in-law, W.C. Graves, Jefferson James had waged and won a battle to reclaim the land of Tranquility Colony from floodwaters each year. After the land was reclaimed, and it was complete. A system of irrigation was developed. By 1910, the Tranquility town site began to take shape with a school, hotel, saloon, and post office. The area was well suited to raising cows, and many fields supported alfalfa. A creamery was also built. Other crops grown include sugar beets and cotton. So now we come to today, when we restore the landmark and plaque that vandals removed and destroyed in 1969, thanks to the incredible work of the California Landmark Foundation and their generous donors. The monument's been restored, especially in these times and the past year and a half we've all been living through. What a valuable reminder of the roots of our city and what could have been an easily forgotten piece of our valley history. Thank you so very much on behalf of the Fresno County Historical Society for the invaluable treasures you are saving.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and the Fresno Historical Society for all your help and care with our rededication today. The Bill Beaver Project is our collaborating partner for the rededication today. This is the second plaque that the California Landmark Foundation and the Bill Beaver Project have placed in the last 2 years. They truly care about California history. Here to speak on behalf of the Bill Beaver Project is Kyle Jarrett.
Thanks, Jay. Sorry I couldn't be there with Bill here. We walked out to the car to head up to Fresno, and the tire had exploded. Turns out you can't drive on nails and travel long distances, so learned a valuable lesson, but glad to see that the unveiling went well. So a little bit about the Bill Beaver Project and why the heck we're helping out with replacing some of California's landmarks. What is it about California's historical landmarks? Why aren't we focusing on just national relevance or the grand events of American history? Well, within each state, and especially California, there are a lot of little local stories that contributed to these larger stories, creating a tapestry, and it's important to go about preserving all of these threads because they all are part of the picture. A lot of these stories, such as Fresno City, don't necessarily get discussed in schools. There's only so much you can fit into a textbook or a semester, which is one of the really valuable things about this California Historical Landmark program, is it lets you get out and about hunting for plaques, visiting the sites where these amazing stories took place. And really, that's what Bill and I here did for a good 6 years. So it's great to see that the California Landmark Foundation is still at it. Happy to help in any way that we can, and looking forward to keeping all of California's stories alive for people to check out for years to come.
We would like to thank the Bill Beavers Project, all of their members, followers, and supporters. Thank you for preserving California history. Kyle would have been here today, but he had car trouble on the way here this morning. We miss you, Kyle. Thank you for all your help with this project, and let's replace another landmark real soon. Official recognition of the historical sites began in Los Angeles in 1895 with the formation of the Landmarks Club under the leadership of Charles Loomis. The Landmarks Club was dedicated to the preservation of historical sites throughout California, starting with the Spanish missions. In 1902, the California Landmarks League was incorporated in San Francisco for similar purposes. It wasn't until 1931 that the landmark program became official, when legislation required that the Director of Natural Resources, quote, register and mark buildings of historical interest or landmarks, unquote. That program exists today as the California Office of Historic Preservation. Here is a video about the OHP and what their role is.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay CORREIA, and I supervise the California Historical Landmarks Program at the Office of Historic Preservation in Sacramento. Congratulations to the California Landmark Foundation on their efforts to replaque and rededicate California Historical Landmark number 488, Fresno City. California Historical Landmarks are those historical properties that are significant to the entire state of California. Not just a city, a town, or a locale, landmarks are significant to the entire state. The process begins when applicants submit nominations to this office. Professional staff review those nominations to ensure that they meet all technical and substantive requirements of the Landmarks program. When nominations are ready, they're scheduled for hearing by the State Historical Resources Commission at one of its quarterly meetings. Upon approval, staff works with applicants to craft language that travelers see on the plaques that appear throughout the state. For further information, go to www.ohp.ca.gov. Again, congratulations to the California Landmark Foundation on their efforts to replaque and rededicate California Historical Landmark number 488, Fresno City.
We would like to thank the California Office of Historic Preservation for all they do to preserve California history. We thank all the supporters of both the California Landmark Foundation and the Bill Beaver Project. Without their support, none of this would be possible today. Thank you. To close out our dedication, I would like to welcome Michael Anderson, Director of Education for the California Landmark Foundation. Michael spent 2 long days working on installing the plaque for this monument. And Michael, thank you for all you do to preserve California history.
Thank you, Ray. I'm Michael Anderson, the Director of Education, and I just wanted to say in closing that these landmarks are very important for spreading knowledge and teaching about the history and origins of many locations and towns. We are very dedicated in preserving these histories accurately and honestly for generations to come, and are very proud to unveil a second landmark in 2 years.
There you go. I gotta unwrap it like a gift. Minus the tape. For more information on how you can help preserve and maintain California state landmarks, please visit our website at www.savethelandmarks.org. You can also find us on Facebook at California Landmark Foundation.